It didn't matter if Lith was going to become Nana's apprentice in the future. Her work ethic wouldn't allow for any kind of favoritism. Tista had to wait her turn to be checked just like everyone else. However, Lith was very happy to wait since it allowed him to cram as much information as he could. It reminded him of his old college days when he would use these waiting periods before a test to review and improve on any subjects he was struggling with. There's so much to read in so little time. Better to focus on light and dark magic since they're the only elements that are foreign to me. It'll be years before I get my hands on a book again, and there is only so much I can learn by myself, he thought. When it was Tista's turn to be checked, Lith carefully studied how Nana performed the light spell, Venire Rad 2. It was the same light detecting spell she had used on him 3 years ago, but this time he had a better understanding of magic and a front seat to see it in action. By being next to Nana, Lith could appreciate every gesture and hand movement she used to amplify the spell's effectiveness. The light enveloped Tista's body, turning gray around her chest and clearly outlining the shape of her lungs. I have good news and bad news, Nana said. The good news is that Tista's condition is the same as always. There are no signs of degenerative tissue this time. But the bad news is that there are no signs of improvement either. I'm afraid that her condition will be permanent. The older she gets, the lesser the chance her body will be able to fix itself. The air in the room grew heavier. Living with a permanent illness was marginally better than having no life at all. Upon hearing this, Lith momentarily forgot about his training, magic, and books. All these meant nothing to him if he couldn't help the only 3 people he loved and trusted. They left Nana's house in low spirits, and the journey home was a silent one. Once they arrived, Alina shared the news with the rest of the family before collapsing into Raz's arms and sobbing uncontrollably. Then, the whole family started crying and hugged each other, looking for comfort. Lith allowed himself to cry, cursing the cruel fate that his sister had been dealt. What good is magic if it can't help anyone? Why do I keep reincarnating simply to replace one living hell with another? Is it bad luck, or is it somehow my fault? Perhaps, in some previous life, I committed such atrocious acts that now I and my loved ones are forever cursed. Perhaps this is my punishment, he thought bitterly. During the following days, Lith kept second-guessing every life choice he had ever made, wondering if he could have changed anything. However, he came to accept the fact that sometimes bad things just happen. Tista had already been sick when he reincarnated, so it couldn't have been his fault. After Nana's offer, Lith was now allowed to openly practice magic. Soon, he proved capable of cleaning the whole house by himself, making the life of his mother and sisters a little easier. Thanks to dark magic, cleaning dishes and cauldrons were done in a matter of minutes. A single spark of dark energy turned food residue and grease into dust. He also experimented with light magic. He was searching for a cure for Tista, but the only thing he managed was to keep her symptoms at bay. Tista now needed fewer treatments from Nana, but she was still sick. All of these made Orpel hate Lith even more. Show off. How am I supposed to enjoy my life with him around all the time? Not only does Leech help Mom with the house chores, but he also helps Tista in her illness, Orpel thought. Mom and Dad are always praising him, calling him smart and talented. And now they never shut up about Leech saving the family money by tending to Tista's condition on his own. No one cares about me and all the hard work I do on the farm. Gods, why did you let him live? Why didn't you give me any talent? Oblivious of his brother's feelings, Lith had struggles of his own. His magical power and his comprehension of mana kept growing, but he still couldn't help feeling like a failure. During the following year, he didn't feel any joy doing magic. He thought that every discovery was useless and all his new power was meaningless. When he turned 4, he reached the time that was called the Golden Age. Children between 4 and 6 years old were big enough to have some freedom, but still too little to help with the heavy and hard chores. They were allowed to play all day without a care in the world. It was the perfect time to make new friends, to get to know the neighbors, and strengthen the ties between the families in the community. On the day of his 4th birthday, after Lith finished his chores, Rena introduced him to all their neighbors. He was supposed to socialize and play, but Lith couldn't concentrate. There was no amount of play or distractions that could make him forget for long the hunger that had always consumed him since he was 5 months old. Raz's farm was located on Lutia's western edge, less than a mile from the great woods known as Tron. Despite its ominous name, it wasn't a particularly dangerous place. The people who lived in the nearby villages depended on the forest as their primary source of timber for their everyday life. Tron also housed a wide variety of wildlife, so those who had weapons went there in search of precious meat and warm fur. It was highly unlikely one would meet monsters of any kind in the forest unless one went several miles deep. No one had explored the woods in detail, so many areas were still uncharted territory. Because of his circumstances, Lith couldn't do much of what he'd done in his previous life. For example, martial arts. The constant practice of magic required a lot of energy, and his situation made it difficult to do anything other than magic. Lith was already skinnier than the rest of his siblings. Any more exertion and he would turn into a pile of bones. He urgently needed more food. But he had been a city boy in his previous life, so he knew nothing about hunting and butchering. He needed a teacher, and that's why he headed for the house of Celia Fastaro, the only hunter in his neighborhood. The main issue would be to get her to teach me. I'm still too little for an apprenticeship, and even if I wasn't, it's very likely that she's already heard about Nana's offer. There's nothing in it for her by helping me. I can only hope that she is a kind and benevolent woman, he thought. Celia's house was a single-story wooden residence, much smaller than Lith's. There was no hen house or barn. Except for a small garden close to the house, the nearby fields were full of weeds and tall grass. She clearly has no interest in farming or stock breeding. That's good news because it means her business is good. I wonder what's in the shed near the house. It's almost as big as the house itself, he thought. Lith knocked on the door, feeling queasy with nervousness. The door opened almost immediately. You again? Are you lost or something? Celia said. She was in her mid-20s and 5'5" tall. Her skin was tanned from the years of being constantly exposed to the sun. Her black hair was short with a haircut identical to Earth's military standards. She could have been considered very cute, but her sharp eyes and rough attitude gave her a tough air, and she seemed manlier than most farmers. She wore a leather hunting jacket over a green shirt, green cargo pants, and brown hunting boots with soft outer soles. This was to limit the noise made while walking in the woods. Hi, Miss Farrow. I need a favor. Could you please teach me how to skin and gut animals? Lith said. Celia raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I'm hungry. Not having any leverage on her, Lith decided that telling the truth was the best policy in this case. I have been hungry for so long that I had forgotten what being completely satisfied feels like. I know I can hunt, but I need to know how to handle the meat so I can cook it and eat it properly. No, I mean, why should I help you? What's in it for me? She said, focusing her eyes on him. What do you mean? Lith asked while hiding the urge to bite her. He was so hungry that she looked like quarry to him. To be honest, I don't believe a runt that barely reaches my belt could hunt anything, not even something as small as a rat. And since teaching you would be a waste of time, I demand compensation. She scratched her chin while thinking of the worst possible deal she could offer in order to drive the little pest away. She had never wanted children of her own, and she certainly didn't want to deal with somebody else's child. If you want to learn from me, first you must bring me some game. But since I'm taking a big risk, and you may end up ruining my merchandise and wasting my time, here's my deal. I'll teach you how to skin and gut the game you bring me, but half of it's mine as compensation. Take it or leave it. So much for hoping for a kind and benevolent woman. This is plain robbery, Lith thought. I'll take it. How long are you going to be here? He asked. I'll be here all day, working. Why? To make sure you honor your deal when I get back with my prey. Lith turned around and left the house. Celia saw him go into the woods acting all tough, despite him not having any weapons or tools to hunt. She let out a big laugh. Then, the door slammed in her face, sending her to the floor. She quickly stood up and went to the nearest window. She saw Lith looking toward the door, his eyes glowing brightly in the dim light of the dawn. Laughing, he entered the woods while she cursed at him. Once in the woods, he activated the Life Vision light spell. It was one of the many he had created over a year of practicing. By infusing his eyes with light magic, Lith was able to detect living things in a different color than the rest of the world, which instead had shades of gray. The stronger the life force, the bigger and brighter the light it produced. This way, he could easily spot animals, even if they were hiding underground, behind some bushes, or inside trees. Lith did not need to hunt something big. As long as it had meat, it would serve his purpose perfectly. Most of the animals ran away as soon as he came into view, but not all of them. Birds and squirrels felt safe perched on top of tree branches. Unfortunately for them, Lith's spirit magic now had a range over 65 feet. They were all within his reach. He only needed to extend his hand towards the quarry, squeeze, and turn his hand to break their necks. In less than 20 minutes, he had already killed 2 birds and 2 squirrels. I could catch more, but I don't want to pay that thief any more than I have to, Lith thought. While walking back to Celia's house, he was having a serious inner conflict. I wish I could just ask my father. Our farm has a hen house. We eat chicken, so he must know how to butcher it. But if I do that, I'll be forced to share my game in equal parts. And if there's something I hate more than being robbed by that woman, it's the idea of Orpel and Treon having the same amount of meat as me. Or worse, having more because they're older. I hunted these animals. Their meat is mine and mine alone. They will only eat the scraps if I choose to share them. When he arrived at Celia's door, he had managed to calm down enough to put on a neutral face. He took some deep breaths before knocking. When Celia opened the door and saw him, she was ready to mock him and call him a quitter for giving up in less than an hour. However, when she saw the game in Lith's hands, her speech about never underestimating how hard a hunter's job is died in her throat.